It's been a couple of years since Henrietta Knight has joined us in the Luck on Sunday studio. I've been itching to get her back in, and I needed no better excuse than the headline on the front of the Racing Post earlier this week. Knight, Ireland's trainers, better than the British. Now, we're going to, I'm sure, get a more nuanced appraisal of that now, but Hen, it was an eye-catching headline. Welcome back.
Nice to be back, thank you, Nick. I think it's a little bit out of context.
I had a feeling you might say that.
Yes.
So what was the context of what you were trying to get at?
It's more the Irish system than against the English system and the way in which they produce their horses that I was very conscious of. And I think that the horses in Ireland have a much better chance of turning out into top-class horses because of the way they're brought up. That's
interesting. So what is it from the time they're, say, 2 or 3 and being broken in and brought through? What do you think sort of being done better or differently or more efficiently there?
We all know that Ireland is the home of the horse, and
yeah,
the most wonderful horses are bred in Ireland, and it's in the blood of the Irish. They've always had horses, the families have horses, and from the word go, from the moment those horses are born, they're bred to be good race horses. And what I feel is that they break them in nowadays. They do break them in probably earlier. In the old days of the Drapers era, I remember Brown Lad wasn't broken in reading about it till he was 6. But now they are broken in much earlier. They are taught to jump much earlier, like in France, and their muscles and their general well-being is prepared at an earlier stage. Once they have been prepared and got ready, and there are so many good yards in Ireland producing these young horses, not the training yards, the other pre-training yards. Once they have been prepared, they then go through this system, either the point-to-point system, which is top class, because it brings them on earlier, and some of the big point-to-point yards are as big as the training yards. But they also, when they've got horses in training, whether it's the big yards or the small yards, they can take them to racecourses and practice them, which we can't do here. We don't have training bumpers, we don't have training hurdles, and we don't have places where these horses can go in an environment where they are against other horses of the same age and stage and learn something. The horses in England are more isolated in their training yards. It doesn't seem that the racecourses will allow big training days. Like in Ireland, you get Tipperary, you get Fairyhouse, you get Thurles, you get these racecourses will have days when you would probably have 600 horses would go to those courses. I mean, at Tipperary there'd be 600 horses in 2 days. And they would learn so much.
So isn't the truth that in Ireland there are all these mechanisms in place where these top trainers are really just identifying their talent more readily? So the filtration system works better and you can see where the good horses are. Isn't that part of it as well?
Yes, and the cream rises to the top at an early age. And then when they've got the cream, then they work on the cream. And they bring it over to England, to the festivals or to the Dublin festivals, and you can see the top horses because they've come out. And also the races, they're not afraid to run them in the races either, the trainers. And big fields, and they're competitive. And like Lee was saying, our racing is not as competitive as it should be. The Irish are quite happy to run in 18-runner, 20-runner beginners' chases over there. Over here you see the novice chases, 3 or 4 runners. It's pathetic. But if the horses don't run against horses on the same level, I know they say bring in the handicap question, but they don't run against horses on the same level. How are they going to learn and get competitive? I mean, it's just sort of walkovers.
So you actually think that actively retards a horse's progress to have it run in uncompetitive races?
I do.
I do. You're going to bring a horse on better by putting that horse in deep.
Yes, definitely. I mean, if you see some of the novice chases we've had lately here, I mean, I saw one the other day, and I shan't mention which it was, but it was just very hard work for one horse to have to do the whole thing more or less on its own. It didn't have any competition. It didn't have anything to inspire it and to teach it.
And so you think, therefore, it's got a lesser chance of reaching its full potential?
Well, then it gets put into the deep end when it goes to somewhere like Cheltenham, and it hasn't had the experience of running in big runner fields, and it probably might be all at sea.
So, do you think things have differed materially since you were training Best Maiden, Edredon Bleu, etc.? Have things differed significantly since then?
I think possibly the structure of the races in England has differed, and we didn't have such small numbers of horses in the races that they do today.
So is that more to do with the fact that the programme hasn't adapted to the population of the horses, rather than the programme being that
we've got
different?
too many races, too much racing in England, and too many races of a similar calibre.
Or that we've actually just got too few horses.
Too few horses because they've been diluted.
Yeah.
And the competitive racing is where we're going wrong, I'm sure.
And so, when you were training those very good horses, were you not thinking, well, actually, I'd quite like a 5-runner novice chase round Exeter to start off?
Oh, we'd love it, yes. But it's probably not necessarily the best thing for the horses. A 5-runner is possibly all right, but for the future, the thing also that worries me is the way in which bumpers are run in England, because I think a lot of the racing in England is run much faster. In the races in Ireland, the horses go much slower. They have time to adjust and adapt to the race course and the race meeting. In England, it seems to be running horses in bumpers to please the owners, to have a winner and a bumper. And it may not be for the benefit of the horse. I would love somebody statistically to find out how many of the horses that have won bumpers in England are still even in training as 7- and 8-year-olds, let alone good horses. Maybe a few of them are very good ones, but so many of them are ruined early on by doing too much with them in a bumper, putting the gun to their head and asking them to do too much when they're not ready for it.
So this is interesting, so that we need to make a clear distinction here, because you were saying one of the advantages in Ireland is that they're bringing horses forward earlier and teaching them and training them and getting them to the track and doing things with them. Yet, on the other hand, you're saying we're doing too much too soon with horses in England. So
we're doing it wrongly.
OK, so we're doing it wrongly.
Yes, we're doing it. The bumpers in Ireland are run differently. There are bumpers, most meetings there are bumpers. And you know, it's very much more of a learning curve for horses. In England, owners want to win bumpers. They want to say a horse is first or second in a bumper. It's not the be-all and end-all in Ireland. It's part of a step upwards. Of course, some of the top horses, like your horses that are coming to Cheltenham for the festival bumper, I mean, some of the Mullins horses have just walked through the bumpers because they're so good. But, you know, there are a lot of horses in the bumpers which you haven't heard much of, but in a few years' time they'll be very good horses because they've learnt steadily. People haven't got the patience over here. In Ireland they've got the patience, possibly because they've got more horses and possibly because they're more conditioned to it. And the owners in Ireland and the trainers play for time. They're not in such a hurry.
Even in Ireland, though, Hen, there will be people saying, it's not quite a duopoly because you've got Henry de Bromhead in there as well, and if Joseph O'Brien feels so inclined, he can sort of get his jump string up to a pretty serious levels. But we've got really two big superpowers in Willie Mullins and Gordon Elliott, and there'll be plenty of the smaller trainers there saying, well, this ain't great for us either. What do you think of that?
Well, you're not going to stop big trainers if you're very successful. Owners are going to want to put their horses with the most successful trainers. But they've done it. I mean, Willie's and Gordon's yards, which I visit quite frequently, they're two amazing yards. They're quite different. But the work and the thought and the the attention to detail in those yards is incredible. And those horses that are there, every horse is treated as an individual horse. It's brought forward. It's you might go out into Willie's yard and think, well, what on earth are all these horses, or into Gordon's? How does he know what they all are? They know them, every one of them. They know exactly where they are. And although they're huge yards, it's not a factory. It's not just a numbers game. It's the individual.
And obviously Paul Nicholls was in here earlier, and it's very annoying because I really wanted to have you on together because I wanted to sort of open this debate up a bit. But obviously he's bristling a bit because he's 12 times champion trainer. He's achieved everything there is to achieve. He's won a stack of Gold Cups. He prides himself on the team that he has around him and his attention to detail. And he's thinking, well, why is Hen saying that these Irish guys can do it better than I can?
I'm not saying that the attention to detail isn't good in a lot of the English yards as well, actually within the yards. I mean, my neighbour Nicky Henderson does a fantastic job with his horses, and I've been to Paul's on several occasions, and he's very particular what goes on. The two big yards, but I think it's somehow that their horses don't continue with the system. I mean, I'd love to have had Paul in here with me. I'd love to ask him what he's done with some of the horses that he brought, the young horses from the sales and things in Ireland. Where have they gone to? And of course, he'd have had an answer for me. He said they're about probably going to win at Cheltenham. But somehow they haven't had the same. They haven't gone through the same avenues as the Irish horses that have been bought at the sales. Nicky's are a bit different. He loves a young horse, and he loves buying store horses. And he's a little bit more like the Irish because he sort of lodges them out with other yards. And of course, now Paul said he was doing that a little bit too, but it'll be interesting to see how it goes. So
you think there is something in this having systems and networks of pre-training yards that is a big part of this? It's
a big part in Ireland because obviously you can't cope with all the numbers. They aren't all ready to be trained for certain races at a certain time. And so I think some of the pre-training yards do a good job in England as well. But maybe more use should be made of them. And it's difficult to get the riders. That's one of my things. I mean, Ireland, so many of the staff, I know they struggle for staff in Ireland as well as they struggle in England, but so many of the people in the yards have come from horse backgrounds and they've been born and bred to horses. And they are very good riders. And whereas in England, a lot of the they come from sort of smaller backgrounds in horses, if I get it right. Some of them come through the Pony Club, but some have had no experience with horses whatsoever. And I know the British Racing School does a very good job, but they aren't sort of, it isn't in the blood. Whereas in Ireland, it's in the blood, and those people understand horses from the start. I can't really explain it until just the fact that I've been in the yards and I've seen the staff, and when you're in the yard you get this feeling of confidence that they all know what they're doing, and it's a lovely feeling because
Do you think, I mean, when you were training, and it's not that long ago, and you were running a big yard,
probably a long time ago now.
It's a big powerful yard in its absolute pomp. Did you have the confidence in your people, in your staff? Did you think at the time, did you think, I'm running a ship, everybody here knows exactly what they were doing? Or were you tearing your hair out occasionally?
I'm very proud of the staff that we had working for us. A lot of them were Irish, in fact. I think a lot of them did know what they were doing, but I was always in the yard with them, and we talked about things, and that's one of the key points, I think, with those two big yards in Ireland. Willie's in the yard talking to staff, Gordon's in the yard talking. They're right there, hands-on all the time. And unless you're hands-on all the time and you're mingling with the staff, you can't know what's going on. And I think it's so important to be with the staff, to try and get confidence of the staff and get the respect from them that they will listen to you and want to ask questions.
Now, I hear a lot of trainers saying, I've sent such a horse to Henrietta Knight, she's done a brilliant job with this horse, teaching him or her to jump. And I've seen you schooling horses, and clearly you do a brilliant job getting these horses to jump. If I was paying a trainer money to train my horse, I'd be, well, why does he need to take the horse to Henrietta Knight? Why does he or she need to take the horse to Henrietta Knight? Surely that should be their job. They should know how to train their horses, shouldn't they?
They don't have the time in the day when racing starts early in the winter and there's short days. There's not the time to spend if they have a difficult horse.
But it's not an inadequacy in them that they're asking you to do that?
No, it's the daylight hours, and that possibly they want a bit of specialist treatment, and certain horses are in need of specialist treatment, and somebody like myself has got a bit more time on my hands, and maybe even stretch through into the early hours of the afternoon. You know, I've got time to do things with horses if they are difficult. Whereas, you know, the poor trainers, they've got into the car and they've gone off to the races again, and they haven't got the time to supervise it all.
And are you getting as much of a buzz from that as you did from training winners?
I love it. I really do enjoy seeing where the horses go to afterwards, and talking to the trainers, in fact, and talking to the jockeys who come in and help me. The jockeys jump them at home and school them. And you had Brendan Powell in here last week, and he's an outstanding horseman. He schools horses for me.
Would he be one of the best?
He would. And James Bowen is very good. And I have Paul O'Brien, who's a real horseman, underrated as a jockey because he probably doesn't get the opportunities, but outstanding horseman. They are the people who school my horses because I trust them and they can give me the feedback, and then we video them and then we explain it all to the trainers, and they're interested and they can come and see them anytime they like, and the owners. It's a system which I love and enjoy it, and I feel proud that they want to bother to send them to us.
You've been incredibly busy the last few years, the pre-training, the buying for people, the sourcing youngsters, writing books. And the book on trainers, I think, is your finest work. You know, examining what it is that gets horses to the point they are, which you've been elucidating on this morning. Henna, are there plans for another book in the offing?
No time. I'm so busy at the moment. I think I'm busier now than I was when I was training. And I have some horses which I run for an owner, look after for an owner, and I travel to Ireland because he's got some horses in training there and some horses in training in England. And it's nearly a full-time job with jumping the horses at home for trainers, travelling to Ireland, looking to buy new horses for owners, and going to sleep at night about 12 o'clock.
And, I mean, in many ways, it sounds fantastic, because it's all that without the pressure of having 50 owners and 100 horses. It's
without the pressure of having to please the owners every day of the year. Owners are fantastic. You can't possibly train horses without the owners, as everybody knows. But, you know, a lot of the owners don't understand how a horse is trained and how the structure of racing is. And there's a lot of explaining needed. And it takes up a lot of time. And I enjoy people, I enjoy talking to people, but it can be quite tiring and quite time-consuming.
Well, I very much enjoyed talking to you again this morning. Hen, thanks so much.
Thank you very much for inviting me in, Nick. Enjoyed it myself.
Henrietta Knight, trainer of Best Mate, Edredon Bleu, so many more, but more latterly author, buyer, and somebody with always an interesting opinion on the game. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.